Hey, welcome to Life in the Leadership Lane. I'm your host, Bruce Waller, where I get to talk to leaders that are making a difference in the workplace and in our communities. What did they do to get started? And what are they doing to stay there? And oh my goodness, are you in for a treat today? As today, I'm getting to talk with Pamela Carroll. Pamela is the founder and CEO at Carroll HR Solutions. She's also a former president for Hill Country HR Association, I believe in 2022. And she's currently serving as a Texas SHRM District Director. Pamela, it's so good to have you on the show. How are you doing today?
Bruce Waller, this is a moment. This is a day. I think you're one of the people that always says some days are bigger than others. This is it. I am on Life and Leadership Lane. This means so much to me. What an opportunity.
I love it. I love it. Okay. For those who are listening right now, I am talking with Pamela. And when her camera came on, immediately I saw the background. I believe it's the capital of the great state of Texas. Where are you located at today?
You know what? You are correct. Life in the Leadership Lane is as big as the state of Texas and more. So, what a great way to honor that and make that full of intent and intention. So, we're podcasting today, Bruce, from the front of the Capitol building in the great state of Texas.
I love it. I love it. Hey, before we get started, I always like to kind of go back to a time when I met my guests. Some people I hadn't met, I'm just meeting for the first time, but there was a moment where they came into my path. And I want to, me and you have known each other for a while through Texas SHRM, but there was
Right.
a moment that really stood out to me. And I want to see if you remember this. El
Okay.
Paso, Texas. I'm
Yeah.
sitting at the table and all of a sudden you give me this package of really nice pens because you know I like to write. And I just remember that moment. Do you remember that?
I do remember that. One of the things that I learned long ago from growing up in this great community of women who, the church was your life. I
Mm.
didn't grow up in a town, I grew up in a community in the woods of Arkansas. And one of the things these women who were your aunts and they taught you is you don't show up empty handed. You
Hmm.
show up with something. And I knew that meeting would be an opportunity for me to come with intention and something to give to people who would be at my table. So why not the gift of writing and
I
give
love that.
everyone a pen?
I
So
love that. That was a great moment for me. Thank you so
yeah, it
much.
was. It
Hey,
was.
I mentioned that you are the founder and CEO of Carroll HR Solutions. I would love for people who don't know Carroll HR Solutions. Can you kind of give just a highlight of how you serve your customers?
So, Carroll HR Solutions, we're really in that space of employee relations.
Mm.
We go in and we help our clients with very tough conversations that they often need to have. We do workplace conflict resolution sessions, we do mediation, and of course, workplace investigations. We consult on those. It's just really a very great place to go in and help people with their workplace cultures.
I'm looking forward to talking more about that because whenever you talk about tough conversations, I'm like, oh man, I'm I'm
Yes.
I'm all for tips around tough conversations. So we're going to talk about that. But before we do, I know you, but there's some things I don't know about you. I would love to hear the Pamela Carroll story. Like, where did you grow up, and how in the world did you get into HR and leadership?
I didn't have that traditional path to
Mm.
HR. So I'll back up. You have to go back to the 1950s to a small community in the Ozark Mountains of Arkansas. I always choke up a little bit here because you go back and you realize what a gift it was at
Mm.
the time. We never had enough to eat. And you growing up with six, I'm the youngest of six in this small mountain town in a community called Welcome Home.
Mm.
Just think of that, just the name, Welcome Home. And the church was the lifeblood of the community and the little school that we had. And we had a farm, very small farm at the time, but it grew. And there was always chickens to feed and cows to feed. And you had chores to do before you went to school. And after you came back to school and you didn't just do your chores, but we were always doing the hustle and you had to work until all the work was done. And
Mm.
heaven forbid you just do your chores. So out of that, you learn this huge work ethic. So I had a nephew who was born with special needs. And that really drove me to want to find your purpose. I no longer felt like playing basketball and cheerleading and being in high school was what I wanted to do. I was 16 years of age and I knew that I wanted to work with special needs kids.
Mm.
So I got into college on probation at the age of 16 and went to the University of Central Arkansas and majored in special education and speech pathology. And
Mm.
it's interesting that I went down there to major in special ed, but when I first took my first class, I realized that all of the special needs children had something in common, and that was usually a speech and language deficit. So I changed my major to speech pathology because, of course, I needed to save all the special needs children. So I became a speech pathologist in the public schools and a first and second grade teacher. From there, because there were mentors and people who always helped me see potential in myself, I launched a career and I came to Texas. You need to follow your dreams, but also your opportunities.
Mm.
I had an opportunity to come to Texas from the small county of Polk County, Arkansas. This gal moved to Dallas, Texas, and I had opportunities there for work. I ended up at the Texas Education Agency in Austin. I had a 30-year career in public school administration in various director roles. I found myself at the age of 22, I was director of the Texas Teacher Appraisal System for the whole state of Texas.
Wow.
And that was because I had a ton of mentors, but I was given lots of responsibility at an early age. And how grateful I am for those opportunities. As I launched into working in various public schools in leadership roles, I landed in that space of being expert witness for school districts, hearings, appeals, coaching principals, elementary principals, secondary principals. And I just love that space of where your work is task driven, but others focused.
Mm.
And I found out that the pieces I loved about those director roles were where you were making an impact and influencing and helping other leaders do more and be more. Thus, then I went in that space of human resources. And after my career in public schools, I then served in various HR roles in tech and in nonprofit. And it's just been a ride that a lot of people just really gave me opportunities to help me soar.
I love that. Oh my goodness. Follow your dreams and opportunities. I
Right.
love that. That's such good
Yeah,
wisdom as
don't
you
give
share.
up your dreams, but I found that you've got to have that dream. And I think you say it so well. What's your purpose? What's your
Mhm.
why? But when you know that, follow the opportunities. It may not be the dream job at first, but yet take it, take it.
Mm. Mm.
And then from there, you'll see what other doors open, what other pathways will come available to you. And then the people you meet along the way, I have just been blessed to be able to collect people that
Mm.
have been on this journey with me, been cheerleaders for me, been advocates for me. Had I not followed those opportunities, I didn't know anybody in Texas. I moved there. I didn't have any money. I actually had to borrow money from colleagues because I didn't even know where Austin was when I got that job to go interview with the Texas Education Agency. And some colleagues I worked at the time all pitched in to give me gas money to drive
Mm.
from Dallas to Austin. And they took a Texas map, and I'd never been down I-35. And they literally drew a little red line on I-35 all the way down to Austin. But not only did those colleagues give me money for gas, but they also gave me money to stay at the Holiday Inn in Austin, Texas, so I would be sure to be there the night before my interview.
Well, you talk about mentors. That's one thing I do like to talk about on the show because that's a common thread for people that have come on the show is they have highlighted a big part of their journey is through mentors that have helped them get to where they are. Share maybe a couple of mentors that helped you, maybe what some of the traits were that made them such a good mentor.
Gosh, there were so many. And, I could go on stories about my mom, my dad. Once I got in that role at the Texas Education Agency, there was a man by the name of Don Weston.
Mm,
I was so young, and I remember interviewing, and I interviewed with the Commissioner of Education at the time. And Bruce, I remember going into that interview right here on Congress Street. The Texas Education was here at the time. And I remember when the lady said to me, Miss Kaufman, I wasn't married at the time, you may go in now. And I remember going in, and the commissioner had his back to me. I walked in, and I heard somebody say, "Have a seat." So I sat down, and he still had his back to me. And he said, "So, why do you want to work for the Texas Education Agency?" Now, Bruce, I'm full of grit and grace, but my mama and all those women in that Free Will Baptist Church and Welcome Home taught me that you don't treat people that way and you don't
mm,
turn your back on people. And so I would never do this. But again, I was a young kid, and I thought, how rude.
mm,
And so I said to him, again, I wouldn't dare say this today. And I remember saying to him, "Well, why don't you tell me why I want to come to work here?"
mm,
I can't believe I said that now. And he turned around and he introduced himself, and he said, "Where are you from?" And so I started telling him. 5 minutes later, he raised his hand and he said, "You've got the job." And he said something about, "Would you do something for, the state as we monitor public schools for compliance with special education?" And I said, "You know what? I don't think I would do it for the compliance piece, but I would do it for the children sitting in those classrooms."
mm,
And when I said that, he said, "You've got the job. When
mm,
can you start?" Then I was assigned to a gentleman by the name of Don Weston. And the character that and the pieces that he brought for me was he took time to shepherd me. That was the only way to do it. I was raw and young and a go getter and confident. And you know how you have those people that you'd rather be coached down than have to coach up?
mm,
I was one of those people that he understood, that he spent time with me, and he would say, "Hey, Pamela, I know that you have, 5 certifications in special education, but let's dial it back a little bit."
mm,
And I was full of grit, and he helped me dial that down, but he also gave me stretch opportunities,
mm,
and he gave me lots of feedback, and he gave me lots of coaching, and it was very specific. And just all of that wisdom he gave me. But he also, I'll never forget, the first November I was in Austin, and I didn't have the money to go home for Thanksgiving. And before we left for the little Thanksgiving break we had, he came up to me and he said, "I don't want you to be by yourself at Thanksgiving. And so I want to invite you to come out to Georgetown and have Thanksgiving with me and my family.
mm,
I don't want you to be alone." So, that relationship he established with me and the trust. And, you have so much respect for someone like that you don't want to disappoint.
mm,
So you over prepare, and you have plan B because you don't want to disappoint anyone who
mm.
would give you that much of their time.
Mm, that's so good. I love that. I got to tell you, I wrote down a couple of things here that I think the listeners right now, if you are listening to the show, you need to get out your pen, you need to get out your paper,
Oh
you need to
gosh,
take
Bruce.
some notes. I love what you said about Mr. Weston, how you shepherd you.
Yeah.
I love how you use that word. And then I also liked what you talked about, and I've heard this from other guests on the show. Stretch assignments have helped them and have made like mentors. They've given so much respect to their mentor for giving them that. But the one I want to talk about real quick here before we dive into leadership is also you talked about coaching, and a lot of times with coaching comes feedback. How just for the listeners listening right now, they may be going through, maybe they need to give someone some feedback, or maybe they just got some feedback and it wasn't so good. How do you work through feedback?
Well, I think the first thing you do is you have to put it through your filters.
Mm,
It has to be meaningful for one thing, and it
yeah.
has to be specific, and I think it has to be timely.
Mm,
So if you're given the feedback in this situation, and then based on the behavior, and then what do you want to see or change or be better or differently? And I think often when leaders give feedback, they don't they don't do step three, and
mm,
that is, given this feedback, here's the behavior I want to see better or differently. And one of the things that Don Weston would do would say, I appreciate you came well prepared, and yet you don't need to be the first voice in the room.
mm,
And going forward, when there are associate commissioners in the room, let's let their voices hear first. So
yeah.
I knew the behavior that was expected after that.
Yeah.
Now, there's also that space of given an opportunity to, if I misunderstood what that feedback was, holding space and giving time for that second follow-up conversation if needed.
Mm. Yeah, so good. So good. I heard coach for the Yukon men's basketball team, I think his name is Dan Hurley. He
Mhm.
mentioned that great players want to be coached.
Yes.
They want that feedback. They want to be coached hard. And as you mentioned coaching, I thought, that's really a great point. When you have a mentor that's really helping you with good coaching,
Yes.
you've got to latch on to that.
I think because early on I got that coaching, I
Hmm.
always asked for that as I
Mm,
developed and as I got bigger roles and was entrusted with better, more and bigger assignments. I would always ask for feedback. And that is just
mm,
simply by saying, what could I do better or differently?
mm.
So I think you have to have that mindset of this was good, but how can I grow and how can I get better?
Yeah, I love that. I'm glad you shared
Anyway,
that because I think high performers do want that feedback. They're asking. I always ask this question every year. Hey, what's something I'm doing well? What's something that I need to change? What's something I need to keep doing? I got that from Dale Carnegie many years ago. Hey, let's talk leadership here. I always like to ask my guests a
yes.
question. If someone said, "Hey, Pamela, what's leadership to you?" How would you respond to that?
I think leadership for me is helping those that are your direct reports and those around you do more and be more. It's pretty
Mm,
simple. How can I help you do more and be more? Yet it's important that you, as the leader, put all that on a foundation of trust. And it's kind of that cornerstone that all success is built on is trust. And I know
mm,
you're familiar with M.R. Covey's work, The Speed of Trust. And there's just, guideposts that we have of how important trust is in beating and developing great leaders and how we model that trust, how we extend trust. And we do that through keeping our commitments, talking straight, showing loyalty, delivering results, and the list goes on and on. But as a leader, you have to, extend trust before you can, be trustworthy.
I love that. I love that. Trust is the foundation of leadership. I've heard that many times. Let me ask you this question as you talk about trust here. How's the best way someone goes about earning trust?
Well, I think one of the best things you can do, and I'm going to go back to something from Brene Brown, is clarity is kind.
Mm,
So when I hire you on and you're my one of my direct reports and you're on my team, let's get great clarity around
mm,
your role. And then I like to use the language of trust by saying things like, I trust you to meet these expectations. I trust that you'll come to me if you get stuck. I
mm,
want you to know it's okay if you fail. Yet we on this team, we have a bias for action and we're not going to stay stuck.
mm,
So I think that's one of the things that you can do when you bring clarity into a role and you start building trust is let them know also on this team, this is how we're going to resolve conflict. I think
mm,
one of the things we don't do as well as leaders is when we have a team is talk about, there's going to be conflict. So how are we going to handle that as a team? And
mm,
that's super important. And then I think as a leader, in order to build relationships, you as the leader, you have to be the bigger person in every conversation.
Mm,
And I see this when I go in to conduct workplace investigations. I go in to conduct workplace conflict mediations. And at some point, something went off the rail. It's
mm,
usually one conversation. And when you look back at where that incivility first took place, and you can
mm,
usually pinpoint an event or a conversation, and you look at the leader and you say, no matter how draining, disloyal, disrespectful, or difficult the conversation is, as the leader, you must be the bigger person in every conversation.
mm,
And so often it's about helping that leader talk about and helping them write a script about some of them. Just, I don't know how to handle these conversations with great care. You build trust with delivering results, and you show loyalty yourself, and you lead with empathy. And that doesn't mean, you have to stay in that empathy box, I like to call it, but you do have to make sure your employees know that you understand their feelings.
mm,
And it's not just, I hear you, but I
mm,
understand your feelings, and I'm going to
mm,
hold space for you. I'm going to hold space for you. Yet we're going to help you, and we're still going to hold you accountable for your job.
mm,
But if you're not having your best mental health day, we're going to help you get past that, but we're still going to hold you up to the greatness that you can be.
mm.
So I just firmly believe in holding space for people and helping them work through their issues, but yet we've got to still call you up to greatness and
Mm.
accountability.
I love all of that. You mentioned workplace investigations and civil conversations. I know trust has got to be a big part of that. I do want to
Yes.
dive into this because I really haven't had anyone come onto the show and really talk about this. I know this is super important, and I want to ask you a couple of questions around that because there's a big audience here, business leaders that are serving HR, serving
Right.
mobility in different organizations. But when someone reaches that place where they're like, hey, a workplace investigation needs to happen. We've had something occur here. When is the best time to reach out for support? What does that look like for those listening right now that I don't know, maybe they've gone through it or maybe they are about to go through it. What are some tips you would give on workplace investigations and just some signs of, hey, you need to reach out and here's some things you need to be thinking about?
So, first of all, I would say anytime you suspect that something's going wrong,
Mm,
you need to think about, do I need to do an investigation on this? And three things about workplace investigations: they need to be prompt,
mm,
thorough, and unbiased.
mm.
Prompt, thorough, and unbiased. Those are just three key attributes, or unbiased or impartial.
Okay.
And prompt, I can't say enough about how important this is. If you suspect wrongdoing in the workplace, jump on it. It's very important that you look at it. And certainly, if an employee comes to you, if the reporter comes to you as an HR person, don't just take the notes and document that they came in, but look into that.
Mm,
And by saying, you brought this forward, and I'm going to need to look into the issues that you brought forward. And I'm going to do that in the most confidential way possible. But we can't get better as an organization, and our work cultures cannot get better if people do not feel like they can come and report.
mm,
So, as you go about that investigation, you first of all define the scope of the allegations that have come forward. From there, then you would lay out your investigation plan. Who do I need to talk to? And in what order do I need to talk to them? And then also your questions. when do you need and what order do you need to interview these people? That is also very important. And
Mhm.
then you certainly, from your plan, then you would make sure you proceed with as much confidentiality as possible, but yet giving people an opportunity to respond. And from your workforce, after you develop your plan and you execute your plan, you've interviewed all your witnesses, and then staying within the scope. So what happens is you start interviewing people and you start interviewing the accused, you have to be really careful for scope creep. Other
Mm.
things will come in, but remember, stay focused on the scope that originally came to you, the issue that originally came to you. And then from there, you write your report of findings. And you're not looking for legal findings, but you're looking for findings of fact.
Mm.
And just that evidence is more than a feather. Is it more probable than not that the allegations that brought forward did occur in the workplace?
Mm.
And then from there, you look at policies. Were any workplace policies violated? And then you do your report of findings and then recommendations that you would have for the CEO, for the director, if somebody needs a written warning, if somebody needs to be fired, what
Mm.
is your recommendation? Now, oftentimes, they just want to report of findings and they will determine their own, they don't want recommendations. But I always offer those because I think it's
Mm.
important. But three things: prompt, thorough, and impartial. So there's a lot more pieces, but that's the big scope right there, you
That
know.
is so good. That's going to help a lot of people listening right now. Hey, I'm wondering though, how do you know, like, what does success look like? That's one of the things I look like. So are you, if it was prompt, if it was thorough, and if it was unbiased, that certainly would be part of that. But at the end of the day, you're trying to figure out what does a successful investigation look like?
I have a starter and an ending question
Mm.
that every time I interview someone, I I ask or put out there. So an example, if I am going to have a tough conversation of someone who's been accused of, let's say, inappropriately touching a colleague,
Mm.
then I put that out there, but you have to make sure the rate and pace and tone of your voice is very
Mm.
soft and slow and non-accusatory. And I put the allegations out there. And let's say I was talking to someone by the name of Sam, and I would say, Sam, you know, I appreciate you and thank you for coming in. And one of the things I usually start with, hey, Sam, I know your role here, but I don't know your story.
Mm.
Tell me your story.
Mm.
And so, that gives some conversation. But then I go in when I am ready, then, and I go into the allegations. I would just say, hey, I just want you to know something that came forward.
Mm.
And it was reported that you touched Sally inappropriately in the coffee lounge this morning. You don't accuse. You start with broad questions and you
Mm.
narrow, 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 narrow. But the first thing I like to say is you know, it was brought forward that you touched Sally inappropriately at the coffee lounge this morning, and just look at them and lean in and say, I just want to invite you to respond to that.
Mhm.
You're not accusing. You're not saying, well, did you do it? Did you think it
Mm.
happened? Was anybody there? Who else saw it? But just start with, I want to invite you to respond to that.
Mm.
And then, as I learned from my good mentor, Don Weston, stop talking.
Ah, very good.
Then wait. Why am I talking? Wait stands for why am I talking? And just respect the silence and
Mm.
don't say anything. And people don't like silence. And they will usually start talking. I've never had anyone go more than 12 seconds before they will start talking. So then you just narrow your questions down. But in the end, and it's like whatever they share with you, just say, thank you for telling me that. It's important that
Mm.
we hear from you, from your perspective. And then, you narrow the questions based on what they tell you, and you follow that trail and that path, and you keep asking detailed questions. And, you say, who else should I talk to about this?
Mhm.
But the one question I always ask that has really served me well is I always end it with, what else is important to you about this conversation?
Mm.
I might ask before that, what should I have asked you, but I did not?
Mm.
But I always like to end with, what else is important to you about this conversation?
I love that because you're really sharing that, hey, I'm here to give you a voice.
Right.
I'm here to let you be heard.
Mhm.
And I love how you approach that. I feel like you have this incredible gift to help leaders in the HR profession, in the business profession that are involved in any type of workplace investigation, something like this, that you have this gift to be able to help people. I noticed that you shared on your LinkedIn. You shared my success is based on my ability to leverage leadership strengths in others that improves their capacity to lead with high trust and empathy, which transforms work cultures and leverages high functioning teams. I love that. Where did that come from?
Gosh, I think just from years of going in with helping leaders when they feel stuck,
Hmm.
when they're concerned about, I need to put somebody on a performance improvement plan on a PIP, but
Hmm.
I don't know, I'm on the struggle bus about how to have that conversation. Well, I tell people to look at, there's three circles. One is the drama, and that's
Hmm.
all this stuff way out in here. And by the way, Cy Wakeman, who's a drama researcher, and her research says that we as leaders spend 2.5 hours a day on drama or drama related issues. Just think what we could do if we got that time back.
Hmm.
Anyway, I digress. But we have this big drama that's circling around us all throughout the workday, but then we have emotions from people, and we need to honor those emotions and hold space for those emotions, and lead with empathy and listen to people and let them know we care. But then where we have to live is in that space of that smaller circle of facts.
Hmm.
And so I start with, let's take the leader who is on the struggle bus about having that conversation with the employee about their performance improvement plan.
Hmm.
So, what do you know for sure? What are the facts? Have you documented? Is this what you think or feel? But
Hmm.
what are the facts? What do you know for sure? So let's start with that. And then let's build a conversation that we can give some specific feedback to this employee about how they can do things better or differently. But you're going to help coach and guide and shepherd to get them there. So, in each, what I love about my work in employee relations is that each situation is different. I got a call from a CEO, and I was just finishing up my work day, and I thought, "Who's this number?" You know how you get a call, and who is this? And so this guy, he said, "Are you Pamela Carroll?" I said, "Yes. How may I help you?" And he said, "You don't know who I am. I got your name from an attorney." He said, "But I need help." And he said, "My HR person is gone to Zurich for a whole month because we have unlimited PTO. And I just have an employee who is exhibiting bad behavior at a conference.
Hmm.
And I need help, and I need it now." Well,
Hmm.
anyway, fast forward, I did take him on as a client, and in 3 days, we had done what we need to do, put that employee on leave until we could do an investigation. And there was certainly many breaches of the employee handbook. And his decision was to terminate that employee, separate that employee. But we did that within 3 days because he had a bias for action, because the behavior of that employee was so egregious that that employee did violate company policies on many levels. So you help that leader by where they are, and everybody's different. But along the way, you also help their culture.
I love that,
So
Pamela. Thank
that's,
you. Thank you for
yeah.
sharing that. I appreciate that.
So,
That's a great story, and I know the listeners are going to get a lot out of that. Hey, let me ask you this:
yeah,
what drives you as a leader?
leaving situations better than where I found them.
Mm,
And I do thrive on the hustle just a little bit.
so
I do
good.
think that, from growing up in Arkansas, if there's cows to feed, there's chickens to feed,
Mm,
you got to go to school but you still have to get up at 5 o'clock and do all this work before school. But I really thrive on making cultures better than where I found them.
and I think you're doing all of that, and I appreciate you sharing this. I know there's going to be some people that are probably going to want to reach out to you. We'll share your information at the show. I do want to ask you this question. You also serve Texas
Sorry.
SHRM as a district director, state
Yeah,
director, and you've also served as the president of one of our 31 local SHRM chapters in the great Hill Country
that's
HR
right.
area. Can you just share for the listeners, like you spend a lot of time volunteering as much as you do working in your job. How has volunteering, how's that helped you in your career?
Well, first of all, it advances my skills and it gives you the opportunity to
Mm,
help other leaders problem solve, help them with time management. It increases my knowledge. It
mm,
help people with their conflict confidence in resolving issues. But along the way, as you help other SHRM chapter
mm,
leaders, you're growing yourself, and not to mention the sense of unity and community that you feel. And you just grow your network. I think you're the one, Bruce, that says your network is your net worth,
mm.
and just being able to add value
Yeah.
and that whole impact that you can make on a bigger scale. And then when people reach back out to you and they say, you know what, Pamela, when you were talking about us, about our leadership goal for our chapter,
Mm,
and you kept encouraging us to, are you asking big enough? Are
mm,
your, are your goals, as we used to say in Arkansas, are they big old bodacious goals? And are they big enough? And just putting those questions out there
mm,
to get that mindset of we can do more and be more, and then to watch their local conferences grow, not from 1 day, but to 2 day, and
mm,
to know that you've had an influence and help them see their potential.
mm.
And it's that synergy, unity, and just being able to see the growth in others. It's just amazing. And what a community.
I feel like your next book is going to be called Do More, Be More. I I love that. I love because that's who you are. That's what you do. You help people and figure out ways to see the
Oh,
possibilities. As a district director, you
thank you,
serve with
Bruce.
excellence, and I appreciate that. Man, I got to tell you, I could spend all day talking about conflict resolution, workforce investigations. It's very the information you share today is very insightful. I know some people are going to want to take a deeper dive on that. So again, I'll share your information at the end of the show. I do want to ask you this one question before we go to It's Time to Accelerate, and that is on advice. I always like to ask my guests if they've ever been given any advice, and you've given some great advice today. Have you ever been given any advice? It was just so good. You just find yourself sharing that with others often.
Gosh, there's so much advice, but and I shared with Don Weston about, one of the skills is talk less, stop
Mm,
talking, and then remember that it's not about you.
mm,
But I think it was
mm,
Max Dupree on that leadership as an art,
mm,
and that first you define reality as a leader, and then lastly you say thank you, but in the
mm,
middle you're a servant. Being in those jobs where it is task driven but others focused,
mm,
my advice is remember it's not about you,
mm,
but it's about the leadership in between where you define reality and you say thank you.
mm.
And one of the also the best piece, and if I can share the story about my mom, gosh, what an angel. But I'm I won't cry. I'll get through this. But when you're the youngest of six kids and you all get off the bus and it was first grade and I started school and I remember coming home and I was just crying, crying, crying. And all my siblings, as we were, running up to the house, they're like, Mom, she's crying, she's crying, she's crying. She won't stop crying. We don't know what's wrong with her. And I was just this heap of sadness in the floor in front of my mom. And I remember the other kids were laughing at my siblings, were laughing at me. And of course, they're almost older. And I remember with one look and one point of her finger, 5 siblings scattered out of the room. And I remember she got down on the floor with me and she said, Pamela June, what is wrong with you? And so I told her how the other kids were making fun of my clothes and they were making fun of me and I wasn't pretty and my head was too big and all these things that all these kids had you made fun of me about all day. And I remember she listened to me and she let me sob there in this pathetic little pile of sadness. And I can remember her finger touching my chin and raising it up to this day. And she looked at me and she held up my chin and she looked me in the eyes and she said, Pamela June, you just be glad those girls think you're worth talking about.
Mm,
Now, we've got chickens to feed and hay to haul and cows to milk. So let's get to the work. And for this day, what she was saying, of course, was one of the things that we know is that keep the main thing,
mm,
and stay out of the drama.
mm,
So the best advice I've ever gotten is stay focused on the work and create a drama-free workplace
mm.
and keep the main thing the main thing.
That is so good. That's very inspiring. My right now, I got to tell you, I have chills.
Oh,
That is so good. I appreciate you sharing that, especially coming from, a lot of times it comes from a lot of different people in our lives, but when it comes from family members, it feels just more. And I love that. I want to shift now to it's time to accelerate for some
okay.
kind of some fun questions as we kind of conclude the show. First question I always like to ask is, would you rather read a book or listen to a book or listen to a podcast? And if so, do you have any favorites?
You know what? I'm a big reader.
Oh,
And so I've got right now 3 books I'm reading. I brought a little show and tell today.
oh, you did.
Of course.
Okay. For
Yeah, I
those
did.
listening,
Of course, Drive
Pamela,
with Purpose
I love
right
that.
here. I can't, I'm back on several chapters here. So Drive with, and this author is Bruce Waller. Awesome. Great examples in here. I'm on that, but I can't do without the Center for Creative Leadership. And I know everybody is in tune with that, but there's this little book right now that's feedback that works. And it talks about just giving feedback in a way where
Hmm,
you hit the situation, the behavior, and the impact.
hmm.
So it's small, but feedback that works from the Center for Creative Leadership. But then a new one that I'm eager to get into that I'm currently reading too is The Situation Room
Ooh.
with George Stephanopoulos. And I think one of the things you can tell about a great leader and some of the great leaders and superintendents across this great state of Texas, I was so fortunate to work for, is how do leaders respond in times of chaos and crisis?
Mm.
And I think that really defines a leader. So I'm eager to get into this book, The
I,
Situation Room, and learn about how our presidents have responded in times of chaos and in times of crisis. What we see in the news is not exactly what happens in that situation room. And as leaders, we all have our situation rooms. And
mm.
then how is that going to define our legacy and our leadership? So that's what I'm reading right now, but I'm a big reader. I also follow, several LinkedIn folks on LinkedIn, um, Cy Wakeman, Brene Brown, just, my LinkedIn, it's so full of wisdom. And so I'm grateful for that.
We all have a situation room.
That's it. We do. We
I
all
love that.
have
Oh
the
my goodness.
situation room. And how can you be better with
Yeah.
situation room?
So
How
good.
can you get better in times of crisis?
So good. So good. Hey, let me
Yeah.
ask you this. In
Yeah.
my book, Life and Leadership Lane, I talk about great leaders or grateful leaders. What are you grateful for?
You know what? I am grateful for the fact that I grew up in a community where the women in that community taught me that character integrity matter.
Mm,
And I'm also grateful for love and joy
mm,
and the love that you feel, thank God for a husband for 37 years of marriage
mm,
and joy, which is your happiness, your content, and your harmony. So I'm grateful for joy.
mm. Now I'm grateful for you coming on the show today. This
Oh,
has
thank
been
you.
so good. I learned so much from you, Pamela. Hey, I've got two last questions and
Yes.
we'll wrap it up. One question is, what energizes you? Like you're a very energetic person. Like what makes you move?
You know what? I think it's the catalyst in me. I like the joy of doing, and I like being a catalyst. That energizes me and helping people. And I know I'm going to say it again, do more and be more.
Mm,
That energizes me.
mm,
But specifically when you get those reach backs from people who've been a direct report for you, or you've helped along the way, or you've helped them get a job, and they say, I learned so much under your leadership.
yeah.
That is a boost. That is joy.
Yeah. I'll tell you, I got energized one time when you sent me a picture. I believe you were playing golf with your son in DC.
Yes.
And that energized me.
Thank you.
So I'm
Thank
sure
you.
that golf might be part of that too. Hey, okay, this is the final question. Pamela,
Yep.
10 years older, is
Yes.
around the corner, knocking at your door, and you're going to go answer that door. What's she going
Yep.
to tell you?
So my older self is going to say, great job on being a lifelong learner.
Mm,
Great job on that. Yet you should have stopped and celebrated more.
mm,
Stopped and celebrated more. The hustle can wait.
mm,
I look back and I had so many direct reports doing great things, and I don't think I stopped and acknowledged their great work enough. But when you know better, you do better, right? And I think it was your sister that was
mhm.
on your podcast, and she talked about the low hanging fruit and
Yeah.
how important it is to celebrate and enjoy
Mm.
the moment. So I think my older self would say, stop and celebrate.
Ah,
The hustle can wait.
my heart is full. That was Dr. Deanna Huff
That's
on the
correct.
podcast. That is my sister, and she said, yes, taste the fruit. And
Taste the fruit.
I'm
Yeah,
trying to do more of that as well, and it tastes so good, doesn't it?
it does.
Oh
It,
my goodness.
the wisdom from Dr. Deanna Huff is still with me.
I love
So
that.
I love your podcast and thank you for letting me be part of it.
This has been so much fun, Pamela. I've had you on my list for a long time. I finally got you on the show. This was, yeah, some days are bigger than others. Today was definitely a big day. Thank you for coming on the show and
Yes.
just sharing your wisdom. Hey, for those who watch the show or listen to the show today and they heard something you said, maybe it was some motivational, inspirational piece, maybe it was around workplace investigations or maybe some of the feedback or maybe some of the books you shared. How is the best way for them to connect with you if they want to follow up?
Pamela J. Carroll or MSN.com, or they can find me on LinkedIn.
That's perfect. And I'll put that link in the show notes so they can contact you. And hey, if you reach out to Pamela, be sure and let her know you heard her on Life in Leadership Lane. It makes that connection instant and share with her something that, she said that might have made some impact. So, hey, listen, I appreciate you. I appreciate serving with you. I appreciate everything I've learned from you. And mostly I appreciate your friendship. Thanks for coming on the show today.
My pleasure. What an opportunity, Bruce. Keep inspiring, Bruce Waller.
I'll do it. Okay. Can't wait to share this. I'll talk to you later.
Bye bye.